What is going on, Misfits? Good to see you again. Welcome back to another edition of Logician Tim Learns. With me, your host, Logician Tim. That's right, this is the show where you get to watch me go from a total gaming newbie to a more informed gaming newbie. What is up, you guys? I hope you had a great weekend. Great Mother's Day for you mothers out there. And hopefully you got to spend some time with your mother or your wife or something like that and make that day special for them. I did. It was a great weekend for me. I enjoyed it. I did get to do a little bit of gaming with my kiddos this weekend. Had some fun playing some Ark. Had a great time with me and my boys, especially since my oldest boy is out of college. I had to spend some quality time with him playing some Ark and some fun video games. He loves that kind of stuff. So let me switch over though, because we're not talking about Ark and video games today. No, we are talking about Conan RPG. That's right. We are back. And tonight we're going to be talking about the GM guide, the tips and tricks that they give us in the GM guide. Now, their guide is pretty large in size and has a lot of information. What I'm going to do is split it up. So tonight I'm going to be talking about the tips and tricks, and then tomorrow night I'm going to be going in further to the GM section and getting some other information that I'll talk about later on. Because there's kind of like two sections of it. Kind of like, if you're a newbie, here's what you should do. Here's some tricks. And others are, how to GM Conan specifically. And so we're going to be going into the first part of that tonight, which is the tips and tricks. Now, let me switch up and open my book real quick. And if you're watching this, if you don't mind, go ahead and hit the like button for me. I always appreciate that. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe. You'll be notified when I go live. Say hi, leave a comment. I always enjoy getting comments on the videos. That's always awesome. I get notified when that happens, so I can come back and reply to you. Just saying, hey man, how you doing? Or, thanks. Or, I didn't like Conan, or I loved Conan, or you got this wrong. I love all that stuff. So just come and say hi. I love seeing new faces. So it's awesome. But yeah, let's dive into the Conan GM guide. So one of the things I really liked about this section is that they wrote it for people with very little or no GM experience, which I really enjoy. If you've been a GM for 30 years or whatever, then you can just kind of skim the section or just skip it altogether. But I think it's really nice that when they remember that there are new people beginning to play RPGs all the time, and all of those new people, there are going to be new GMs all the time. And so writing a section specifically for them, for those new people, and keeping them in mind when you're writing books is one of my pet peeves. You've got to do that. You've got to do that. There's RPGs are making a huge, I guess, comeback, whatever you want to call it. They're getting very, very popular, and more people are playing them. And as you do, you're going to have people that don't know necessarily what's going on. And it's nice if your book has that there, because a lot of people may live out, in the rural areas. They might not have, the support group and friends that have been doing this for a long time. They might be trying to learn all by themselves. If you put some of it in a book that they can read, and then they can use that information to go ask questions online or something like that, it gives them something to start with. And I just think that's really cool when a game does that. So, now, let's start with some of the tips that they give us here. The art of game mastering, that's what they call it. And a few of these tips are fairly common sense, but it's nice that they threw it in there anyways. Like I said, it helps that new person that may have never GM'd a day in their life, never thought about it. And some of these things are fairly basic, but I'm glad they threw them in there. The first thing they tell us is, of course, to know the rules, right? And they tell us that you should set out to be as familiar as you can with the rules before the game starts, right? And I think this makes sense. And because the GM, if you're going to be the GM, you're going to be the final judge when it comes to, rule disputes and kind of knowing a particular rule, or at least kind of knowing where to find it, very quickly is going to make all the difference in the world. Because, if you have to stop the game and, try to find your book, dig it out, kind of start flipping through the pages, you don't know which section it's in, and you're flipping back and forth, and, you're spending 15 minutes flipping through the book. Well, what's going to happen to your players? Well, they're going to get bored out of their mind, right? I would, and I would probably pick up my phone and I would start scrolling through my phone because I'd be bored to death. And that's like the last thing that you want to happen in the middle of your campaign, right? You want your players to be engaged and can't wait for the next sentence. So kind of know and familiarize yourself with the rules. And one of the things that I like to say is, kind of practice doing, the skill rolls and some combat, some mock combat and things before your first session, or even before a few of your sessions, until you really get the hang of it, to make sure that you know what you're doing a little bit. And if you need to, put some Post-it notes on the book, kind of hanging out of the side, where you can say, okay, this is the section on combat, this is the section on equipment, or whatever, and kind of make some notations, so that when you open your book and you're like, oh, where was that section on sorcery? Okay, here it is. It's back here, because I have this Post-it note right here. Small things like that can make a big difference in keeping your game flowing, right? Because you don't want people jumping on that phone. That's the last thing that you want to happen, right? If you can help it. Secondly, they tell us to be prepared, and so I think this is pretty much again, kind of common sense, but who knows? Because the GM is really responsible for making sure this game runs really smooth, right? And so little things like bringing extra paper or pencils with erasers if you're not using mechanical, erasers and pencil sharpener if you're not using mechanical, or extra dice and extra tokens, any other supplies that your players might need. Bring them along with you, because it's going to happen. People are going to forget things and be digging around in the middle of the game and looking, what do I do with my pencil? And you're like, here, it's sitting on the table. Just grab this one, right? And it keeps your game flowing well. And an interesting tip that they give in the book is holding on to the players' character sheets between sessions. And so this is something that I definitely would not have thought of, but having the GM hold on to those character sheets will ensure that your players kind of don't forget them, like I'm sure is going to happen a lot. And it also gives you the ability to see the players' skills and their abilities, their background, to kind of familiarize yourself with them. Well, I'm having trouble with that word today. But yeah, you can get to know the player better, right? The character better. Yeah, that makes sense. You get to know the character better and their background, and you can use that information to weave into the stories that really personalize the character and the stories for that character, right? Because if I'm just fighting elves because they're mean, that's very different than elves killed my parents, and this specific elf right here didn't want to just kill my parents. It wants to kill me too, and now I'm trying to get my vengeance, right? That's a lot better storyline than just, hey, I'm just killing elves or orcs or whatever it may be, right? Because they're mean. So yeah, personalize that stuff. So yeah, take those character sheets home with you, between sessions if you want. I guess some characters want, some people want to take theirs home with them. But again, that's going to be, they're probably going to forget them sometimes. But if you do let them take them home, maybe just take a picture of each page real quick. So when you're doing your campaign, you can kind of flip through those pictures and zoom in and read the different sections and see what skills and abilities and background that character may have, and see how you can weave that or use that in your campaign. Plus, it's going to come in handy when the character forgets theirs, and you can just hand them a blank character sheet, and you can show them the pictures on your phone, and they can fill out everything because they forgot it again, right? Because that happens. That happens all the time. So yeah, I think that's just a good, couple easy tips that they give us. Thought it was pretty neat. Wanted to throw that at you guys. Now they tell us a little bit about some GM tricks, and something that Scott is recently trying to instill in me. Excuse me, my nose itches. A good trick that Scott has been trying to instill in me is to create tension. Okay, so tension is going to build drama, which makes the story, right? If you just have everybody just sitting at home and you're farming your crops or eating at McDonald's or whatever it is, right? There's not really a story, right? They're just like living their life. And okay, well, I can do that without playing an RPG. You want there to be some tension in there. And yes, because this tension is going to build drama, and it's going to make the story, like the NPCs and the players, they kind of make sense of what's going on in this world through this drama, right? So if you create the right tension between like two or more either players that are playing the game, or NPCs or factions or groups of people, then that's going to create some tension that you can put your characters in and help them kind of get going and get motivated and see where they fit in, right? And they say that in Conan, that they don't spend a lot of time, kind of worrying about things like morality or, like the nature of being. What is knowledge? Why are we here? They say mostly they're kind of a people of action, right? And so they say spend your time creating the world and also the problems of that world, and then allow your characters, the player characters, to interact and choose what they want to do about those problems, if anything, right? But a lot of times, if you give them the choice, they're going to choose to try to do something about those problems, just because it makes it fun, and you're going to get more engagements that way, and kill stuff, and earn experience, and all that kind of stuff. And that's what it's all about. And the best way to do that really is to make it personal about them in some way, right? And so, like I said, maybe the orcs killed my parents, and they're out to kill me now to kill the bloodline or something. I don't know. Well, that makes it personal to me as a character, and now I have more motivation to go hunt down orcs, right? And so just making that, making the tension and then making that tension personal to the players is really key to making an awesome drama, an awesome story that anybody can just jump in and start playing, right? So yeah, I just thought that was a good tip. Now, another thing they tell us is to let the players be extraordinary, right? The book says that the readers of Conan, they rarely want to know, what happened to that bartender in the mall, or about some random court official, right? They don't really care about that, because they say Howard didn't focus on writing about just common people, because honestly, who would want to read that? Instead, he wrote about these larger-than-life characters, right? Conan is a larger-than-life character, no doubt. And he wrote about these larger-than-life characters in the world, and that is likely what the players enjoy about Conan. If you're a fan of Conan, you like these larger-than-life characters, and you can actually let the players be larger-than-life too. And you should let them, be heroes. Let them be capable of these great deeds and astonishing acts of bravery if they want to, right? Let them steal stuff if that's what they want to do. Let them be a villain if that's what they want to do. Let them be larger than life. Let them accomplish their goals, their characters' goals, far above those of ordinary people. And I think that's key. And that even says, let the people of the Hyborian area write stories about their greatness, and it's just really making their players make a difference in the world and impact the world in some meaningful way. And that's what they're looking to do, especially if they're reading Conan. They're probably a fan of that type of thing. So good tip there. Now, another thing they talk about is, you're responsible, the GM is responsible for, setting up the threats and the challenges and the monsters, all that kind of stuff that the players are going to be going up against, right? But you have to remember that you are not the enemy of the players, right? It's not the GM against the players. If that was the case, the GM would pretty much win 100% of the time, right? Because the GM is almost like a god and can just make stuff happen. And the players wouldn't stand a chance. So you as the GM are not the enemy of the players. I don't care what you think. That's not how it's supposed to be. Good GMing is kind of the art of accommodating these player expectations, as well as their in-game desires. And so you as the GM get to shape the experience of the play to kind of create these paths that the players can go down and that are going to feel challenging to them and rewarding to the players at the same time, right? If it's not challenging, it's probably not rewarding. Is kind of a good way to think of things. If it's easy, then it's not really rewarding. So make some stuff challenging, but don't kill your players, right? Then you don't want to railroad your players either. And I've said this a lot, and it's worth mentioning again. So, if railroading is like kind of forcing your characters, the players to do something that you want to do because it's in your plot, and they want to do something else, and you try to stop them put roadblocks in front of them one after another. Don't do that. Don't do that. If your characters decide that they want to kidnap this NPC and they want to force it to tell them parts of the plot that you don't want to reveal, don't try to stop them. Don't just suddenly jump in and say that the NPC died unexpectedly, had a heart attack before they could get the information. Your players really are going to know that you're messing with the story, and they're going to get frustrated. Instead, follow it and just kind of see how it plays out. Maybe throw in something a little bit more creative. Maybe they hear some guards outside and they only have a few seconds before the guards come in and interrupt things. Or maybe another NPC walks in and stops them, saying that they know this person that they kidnapped and they're a great person to have a bunch of kids, or something, and try to appeal to them that way. But really, the rule of thumb is it's always best to kind of go with the story that your players want to go down. Don't force them into your plot that you have planned out. Guide them when you can, creatively, but let the players kind of dictate. You set the scene, and then the players are going to see how they move in those scenes, right? Let me have a drink here. James Freeman over on Facebook on Misfits Tabletop says, messing with the story, are you talking about the Conan or season 8 of Game of Thrones? Ouch. Spoiler alert. No spoiler alert. All right. Yeah. Thanks, James. Good to see you, my dude. Good to see you, for sure. Wow. Yeah, it was rough. All right, let's move on. So we're going to talk about framing scenes. Now, framing scenes in an RPG is really a lot like being like a director, like a cinematographer or, a screenwriter. So you've kind of figured out the basic context of what's going on, who is involved and where and when it's happening, those type of things. Now, you're not writing a book, right? So you don't get to decide where, like what happens to every character and where this plot goes. Why are people messaging me? Let me turn that off. And so you're not writing a book where you get to decide like everything that happens, because the players have their own idea of how things are going to go. And you should let them change the story, like I said before. You're not writing a book. You're writing a campaign. You're writing a framework, right, that this story takes place in. Now, instead, like I said, you're going to build this framework for the characters to kind of go down the path that they decide. So a scene, they say, can be framed, fairly quickly. So they said just 1, 2, 3 sentences or so is usually enough to set up this scene or kind of frame the scene, right? Where's my notes on this? I talked about this just a minute. What did I say? I don't remember. So just a few sentences is usually enough. And what you want to do here is give just enough information and just enough detail to allow the players to kind of fill in the blanks on their own, right? And a good tip they give us is to address more than one sense when you're explaining it to them. Don't just address what they see. Think about things like, what does it smell like? Is there a breeze, kind of coming through? Is the air stagnant, right? Those type of things. And those type of details are what will immerse those players into the world very quickly when you're describing those scenes. Now, the elements that you choose to emphasize in the scene are the things that the players will normally consider important, right? And I heard this one time. I thought it was funny that you can kind of talk about this glorious glowing orb in the middle of the room, and give a lot of detail about it. And then you say, you describe one little crack in the wall over here for half a second. Excuse me. And the player's they're gonna ignore the glowing orb in the middle of the room. They're gonna go looking at that little crack in the wall. So sometimes you can kind of work against that, and play on that as well. But for the most part, the things that you emphasize, the characters are going to consider important. Now, if you do this well, then it's going to give the players really a good starting point for describing their own actions. And it's also going to encourage them to role play the scenes with you. So the more you kind of role play the scenes as a GM, the more that your players are going to role play as well. And that makes the immersion better for everybody, the GM included, right? And one of the tips they give us here is to start each scene that you make with the questions of, basic questions: who, what, where, when, and where, right? Even if you can't answer those you can't tell the players all the answers to those things, you should give them just kind of a sense, at least, of what is going on, so that they can get a frame of reference. What time of day is it? What time of year is it? Who's present? Who's there? Why are they there? If you can say that, right? Those type of things will give the player characters some information on what is going on and give them a chance to get immersed into that scene better, right? And they tell us basically every significant character that you put in a scene is going to need some type of motivation, obviously, of why they're there and what they're, why they're doing what they're doing and why they're going where they're going, whatever it is. Just like real people, I don't just walk into a room for no reason generally. Like sometimes I walk in there for a reason, then I forget it. Does that ever happen to you? It happens all the time. But most of the time people don't do anything, for no reason. Usually they do things for a reason, and make sure that when you have characters either coming into a scene or leaving a scene that are main characters, that you have some type of reason why, right? So just a nice little tip there. Now, finally, the GM should determine what's happening in the scene. So when the characters walk into the tavern, is there an argument that's taking place? Or is it, strangely peaceful? It's usually very rowdy in here, and now it's really quiet. What's going on? And they kind of tell us that in general, something is going on in each scene, right? Typically, there's something, that's why you're there. You're going to skip over it if there's not something going on, typically, right? And if there's nothing happening in the scene where you are, that usually means because there's something happening somewhere else, and kind of lead the players and guide the players to discover what that is. Hey, the tavern's way too quiet today. What's going on? I don't know. Let's ask the bartender, right? Well, everybody's over here at the funeral or whatever, right? And you can kind of push your players into certain adventures that way. So I think that's a pretty cool tip. Now, they do give us some tricks for framing your scenes. And they tell us that they'll kind of produce some different effects and feelings that kind of evoke those feelings out of your players. So they give us a couple of different ones. One of them I thought was interesting was ask the players to answer the question, literally ask them out loud, why are you here? You walk in the tavern, why are you here in a scene? And this is quickly going to get the attention of that player, and they're going to start focusing on the scene and really thinking about it. Why did I come here? Was I thirsty? Was I was I looking for a clue? Was I, what was I doing? Right. And it's going to re-immerse them into that scene and what is happening in that character. And I like that idea. It's also going to help get the players' input and give you some new ideas on what to do and what the players expect. Right. So they might go, hey, I'm here. I was kind of thirsty, so I went to the bar, but I'm really here because I want to see if, such and such's brother is supposed to hang out here, and I want to see if I can catch him for more information. Well, that you might have not thought about that as a GM at all. And now all of a sudden, bing, hey, you see the brother walk in, whatever, and you've got this new idea, right? Or maybe the bartender says, hey, I think you're here looking for this brother. He's not here tonight. He's in the hospital at such and such, right? And you could go over there and see him that way. So just letting the players have some input, and it can give you this back and forth of what the players expect, and also give you some new ideas on how to meet those expectations and how to keep that story moving forward. So I just think that's a great tip. Great tip. So ask those questions, the question of the players, why are you here? Now, second tip to kind of give us is you don't have to frame each scene from the beginning. Like, hey, you walk into the front door of the bar. Everybody looks up for a second, looks away. You make your way to the bar, to a table, and you sit down. You start talking amongst yourselves, right? You don't have to go like every step, like step of the way, right? You can actually throw them kind of in the middle of a scene with no idea what's going on, right? Maybe you're saying you find yourself walking around, walking down the path when, three mercenaries come out of nowhere and they start running towards you, right? That's a scene. And they have to figure out what they're going to do. They're going to stop and fight. They're going to run. What are they going to do? Or you can skip some of the boring stuff and, say, hey, you've entered the city. You've just finished eating and drinking. So you've kind of skipped all that, right? When they sat down and ordered their meal and all that kind of crap. You've just finished eating and drinking when a stranger walks in. And then you let them pick it up, right? Pick it up when it starts to get interesting. And this is going to help get rid of those boring, slow parts and get right to the decisions for the players. And I think sometimes that's needed. Now, sometimes you do want to have some slow parts, and I think that's okay. Kind of give everybody some cool down time after maybe a big fight or a very dramatic scene. I think it's good to have some of that cool down. But if not, go ahead and skip those parts and get right into those decisions for the players. That's what they're going to enjoy. It's kind of a pacing issue, right? Just like a movie would be. So what you want to remember here really is not to put your players in a situation that's unfair, where they have no choice, like over their prior response, right? So you don't want to say like, you've been having drinks with this stranger that walked in, and all of a sudden he casts enthrall on you, and you're all mesmerized. Like, that's not really fair, right? I didn't have any chance to do anything. The GM just told me I sat down with a stranger and I got enthralled. Like, come on, dude. So you didn't really give them a chance, and that's the mistake. So instead, if you can say something like, it's looking like the stranger is preparing some type of incantation. Maybe it's an enthrall spell that he's trying to mumble. Well, this is at least going to give your players a chance to react in some way and give them some choices in their game, which is what they're looking for. It's all about giving the players the choices and empowering them to make those choices. And that's what makes them feel like they have control of their game. And you're just kind of guiding them through the story. So they have some really good kind of tips and tricks in here. A couple of them that I wouldn't have thought of. And so I thought it was pretty neat. And what we're going to do, like I said, is we're going to split this up. So tomorrow, we're going to talk about the back half of the GM guide, when we're going to be talking about some of the skill tests. Oops, sorry, I'm bumping the mic. I love doing that. Momentum points, doom points, using doom as a mechanic. And remember, doom points are the stuff that you have to pay to the GM. Then he later uses it to make things happen against the players, right? And so we'll be talking about that tomorrow and my feelings on that, how you earn doom and spend doom, and all that kind of fun stuff tomorrow. There's the fortune points, going over that, and some Mo stuff. Yeah, so that'll be it. And then we'll probably wrap it up on Wednesday with a report card. So that's it for me tonight. I really appreciate you all tuning in, and we'll see y'all tomorrow. I'll be back here at 5 p.m. Central Time talking about those doom points, fortune points, all that kind of fun stuff. And yeah, we get to figure out how those kind of things work, because I'm interested. I just haven't seen one yet that I've really fallen in love with. These like points you give to the GM so that they can be GMs. I don't know. But we'll see if this one changes my mind. We'll see. Again, appreciate you guys watching. Hit that like button for me. Share the stream. I always love seeing new faces around here. Hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. And make some comments, man. Just say hi. Just tell me something that you love about Conan or hate about Conan. I love hearing it all. So that's it for me tonight, you guys. We'll see you all tomorrow at 5 p.m.